Hello world. So today we're going to be creating a Mulesoft API in Mule 4.1.4. So let's go ahead and open up Anypoint Studio. I've got it open because it takes forever to open. It's a very heavy product. So let's try to do this pretty quickly. Aiming for 5. We'll see if we can do it. Alright, so first things first, right click on your package explorer, select new and Mule project. Now for the project name, I'm just going to do hello world, runtime 4.1.4. I don't have an API spec. Mulesoft has their version, it's called RAML, and the language that they use for the spec is YAML. And you can also import Swagger specs using JSON, open API specs, but for now we're not going to use this. Default location is just going to be our studio workspace. If you notice, it'll create a directory called hello world, which is going to be the same as the project name. So you click finish and it'll create the project for you. Inside of the project, you'll notice source main mule. Inside of the source main mule directory, there is a hello world XML. And this is where we will create our API. So the first thing we need to do is give it a listener. Now listener is going to tell Mulesoft, hey, I want you to listen on this port. Default is going to be 8081. And when you find a request coming into that port, look for the path. If the path matches, then process the workflow in this API. So I can show you that. Now, when we drag in the listener, it's going to create a flow for us automatically because we dropped it into no flow. So listeners must be inside of a flow. It'll be the source of the flow. So if you notice here, it created a hello world flow. If you wanted to create that yourself manually, you can. You can search in the palette for the word flow, and it'll say core flow. So you'll drag this in here, and you can see same kind of thing when you drag the listener, except this time it's empty. So we'll keep we'll do hello world. Let's keep this consistent here. We'll do dash flow. Okay, so now we've renamed our flow. And we'll drag the listener into our source. So listener is just going to be here, HTTP listener, drag, and there you go. So you notice it shows you an error, and the reason it's doing that is because you currently have no configuration for it and no path for it. So it doesn't really know what this listener is supposed to do. So let's tell it what to do. There are two ways of doing this. First one is you click on global elements, you click on create, and then you look for HTTP listener config. So this is the configuration for that listener, but there's an easier way to do it. Let's cancel out of this, go back into message flow, and inside of message flow you'll see this green plus. Now if you had different options, you can select them. Let's say you'd already created it, but because nothing's been created, no configuration has been created, we'll select the green plus. And we'll keep the default name, that's fine for now, HTTP listener config. We're going to have localhost be our host, and then the port, we'll have this be the default port, 8081. And that's really it. You can select HTTPS if you want to, but for this hello world, we're just going to use HTTP. So we'll keep it a default. Click OK, and it has not gone away. There's still an error because it's expecting the path. So now it knows what port to listen to, but it doesn't know what path. You could have multiple APIs on the same port. Let's say you have 10 APIs on one port, but each API should have its own path. The standard I like to use is start with API / API name. So in my case, it's going to be hello world, and then the version number. This is the first one, so we're going to do /v1. Alright, so save that, and there you go. All errors are gone. So if you were to run this, nothing would really happen. So we'll need to create a response for this API. So to do that, we're going to have to select the transform message, drag it into the process, and rename it to, let's say, hello world response. Alright, so what does this transform message do? Well, it basically is going to set this payload. It's going to override it with whatever we want it to be. So payload is basically the response is going to come back from this API. So whatever you want the response to be, you have to make sure that it is set in payload, inside of payload. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and do hello world. There you go. Very easy. Put this inside of quotes and save it. So here's another save button for you. Boom. All right, so that is it. We can go ahead and run this by, oh, looks like I already ran it. I don't know when I ran this. Weird. Okay, so to run it, I'm not sure why I ran this, but to run it, you're supposed to right click on this and then click play. There's going to be a green little play button here. It'll build and it'll deploy for you locally. Looks like it's already done that, so we can test it out. Open up Postman and select send. Oh, by the way, localhost, the port that we set, and then the path that we set inside of that listener. So that's how that works. We're going to do a get request. Oh, I realized I didn't show you guys that. So, okay, hello world, there you go. This is the payload that we set inside of this hello world response, but let me show you guys the options that we set here. So in this case, the allowed method, we can select this get. Right now, we left it empty, so it really allows all, but we want to select only get. So we'll go ahead and save that. Okay, and then let's say we want to modify this response. The response currently is in Java, content type Java, but ideally we'd want this to be returned in something like JSON or XML. I like setting defaults to JSON, so let's go ahead and do that. If you notice, there's a header portion inside of this transform message. The first part is the DataWeave version. Now, DataWeave is a proprietary language created by Mulesoft. They're on version 2.0. It's pretty powerful. There are a few limitations I've noticed, but you know, we've been able to get around them. Sometimes easily, sometimes not so easily. But nevertheless, this is DataWeave 2.0. This is always going to be generated for you. You'll never have to do this. However, you'll probably want to modify the outputs. Again, this is sending back Java, so this is a Java string. We don't want that. We want JSON. So to change the MIME type there, you just modify that to JSON, and let's make this proper JSON. So we're going to do this here. Hello world, and there you go. Okay, there we go. And we'll do something like response. All right, response hello world. We're going to save that, and it should hot deploy. All right, deployed. And if we send another response, remember this is currently in Java, and this is the body that it's returning. It's just a string hello world, but because we've changed it to JSON, there you go, response hello world. And if you go to the headers, the header return now content type is JSON. So there you go. That's a quick hello world. I guess I can show you guys the configuration. So basically what's going on here is we modified the GUI. You know, we dragged and dropped these connectors, but you know, Mulesoft in the back end is really just generating this configuration XML for you. You can actually go in here and modify that if you wanted to. Here's our transform message. We named it hello world response. If you look here, hello world response. If we modify the XML, it should modify the GUI for us. So let's do, we're overriding payload. So let's name this override payload. Control save, go back to message flow. You can see that it's now overwritten the old name to override payload. And it's the same way you can actually modify the payload itself. So you can modify the data weave that we coded in here by going into the configuration XML, looking at the data weave portion here inside of message. Again, we're setting payload, and inside of payload we can take a look at our header. We don't want to touch that. We've already modified it to be JSON. And our response is hello world, but let's say we want to add some feeling in here and get an exclamation mark there. Control save, control save, and deployed. All right, so now if we go in here, no exclamation, but we've modified that. So let's do exclamation. And then I'll give you guys a little bit of data weave. So let's return the timestamp. So proper JSON, comma, let's do timestamp, and we will do, so to get the current time, you just do now. This is a data weave function that they've given us so we can use to return the current time. Well, there you go, current date time. So if we save this and we make a request now, you can see that timestamp is now being returned. Pretty cool. And we'll do one more. Let's add another one. Thank you. Well, let's do response 2. Thank you. Ooh, I don't like this. This should not be a capital, lowercase, cool. Save that. And now we should see a thank you. So there you go. Hello world. Pretty straightforward. Hope you found this useful. I'll be creating more videos. This is just the very first intro video that I've created, so we'll be doing more and more. If you guys want to see anything in specific, let me know. Hope you like the video. Thanks.